Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Her Story Online Summit for International Women's Day, March 2026. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, based here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today we have an incredible lineup of speakers. We launched yesterday with such a great bang. We are late today, and I will take full responsibility for it because of daylight savings. So I was sleeping on the job. Fortunately, my amazing speakers woke me up, and we are starting an hour earlier in Australia, but on time in the United States almost. So let me tell you a little bit about what the HerStory Circle is all about. We are a global platform that's dedicated to amplifying women's voices from all walks of life. We believe in the power of storytelling to inspire, educate, and connect individuals, fostering a world where every woman's story is heard and valued. Our mission is to create opportunities for women to share their experiences, to build communities, and drive positive change. The Her Story International Women's Day Online Summit 2026 is a virtual event celebrating the achievements of women and exploring the challenges that they face. Through inspiring speeches and panel discussions, the summit aims to empower women to rise through story, power, and possibility. So this year's theme is Voices That Shape the Future, Women Rising Through Power, Story, and Possibility. So I'm going to welcome our first speaker for the day. Thank you so much for showing up on time before I was here, Rachel. The stage is yours. Please introduce yourself. Tell everybody where you are and share your story.
Absolutely. My name is Rachel Erickson. I am calling in from Colorado today. And the first time I heard my own voice played back to me, I wanted to turn it off. Not because it sounded bad necessarily, but because it sounded so visible. Now, I want to take you back to a Tuesday afternoon in May of 2022. I'm sitting at my desk at my home office in sunny California. It's a beautiful day outside, but the house is dead silent. You know that heavy mid-afternoon silence where the only thing you can hear is the hum of your computer and that blood rushing in your own ears. The air in the room is super stale. I can literally smell my cold coffee and my face is starting to feel hot. I'm resting my hands on the edge of my desk and the laminate feels freezing against my wrists. I had just signed off of my weekly coaching call where we'd had a guest speaker who talked to us about the necessity of getting confident on camera as the leaders and owners of our businesses. I tell myself I have to blink because the screen is so bright, it's almost hurting my eyes. But in reality, I'm blinking away hot tears. After closing my Zoom window, I'm left staring at a cash flow projection that I'd been working on before the call. Specifically, I can't stop staring at the payroll column. I see the names of the women I've hired, women who believed in me, women who left secure corporate jobs to follow me. I can taste the metallic tang of fear in the back of my throat because the math isn't mathing. I realized in that moment that I had hit the ceiling of what I could do from the shadows. I had spent my entire career being a doer, the one behind the curtain. But I suddenly realized that by hiding myself, I was reducing the paycheck of every woman on my team. I pushed my chair back. The sound scraped against the floor, and I took a deep breath. I realized that my introversion, which I had always protected as just my personality, was actually becoming a liability. Remaining invisible was no longer humble. It was irresponsible. So I had to make a choice. I knew I couldn't just try to be visible. I had to build a system for it. I hired that media specialist from my coaching call and did what so many people will tell you about creating videos. I just started. And at first it was excruciating. Now, if you're an introvert, you know that media training is essentially a horror movie. They put a camera in your face, they make you talk, and then the worst part, they make you watch it back. I hated it. I hated seeing my face. I hated hearing my voice. I picked apart everything. Why does my mouth move like that? Do I really sound that uncertain? My instinct became to perform. I thought that to be visible, I had to become someone else. I thought I had to be loud, aggressive, charismatic, and on top of all that, as a woman, I thought I had to look flawlessly beautiful. I would spend hours prepping to create a 30-second reel, full hair, full makeup, cute business outfit, all made up on the outside, but terrified on the inside. I remember sitting in front of the camera, clutching my script so hard the paper was crinkling. I was doing all of this because my business had a massive mission. I wanted to educate a wider audience on the processes of large apparel corporations to foster more diverse and sustainable brands. But my fear of the camera was strangling my message. The camera doesn't lie. When you perform, you disconnect. Those first videos are fun to look back at today because I can see how hard I was trying to be something that I just wasn't. Until one day, and eventually, things shifted. I kept practicing with my media coach, and I stopped trying to be perfect. As a certified project management professional and a fashion industry business leader, I did what any type A introverted operator would do, and I built a process. I realized that if I was going to survive this, I needed a practical toolkit. I needed rules to follow when my brain was telling me to run away. I stopped trying to be an influencer and started focusing on being effective. I developed a checklist for myself. It's what I now call the real method. Not only does this give me the practical steps that I need, but it also reminds me to be my authentic, real self. Now, if you're a woman who knows she needs to step out of the shadows, whether you're recording a podcast, filming a video for your business, or just turning on your camera for a Zoom presentation, this is exactly how you do it. First is R. Rehearse the reps. Confidence isn't magic, it's muscle memory. Don't wait for inspiration or for when you feel ready because you will never feel ready. Practice out loud before you ever press record. Get the terrible, awkward takes out of your system while you're making your morning coffee. Standardize the discomfort so that when the red light goes on, your mouth already knows what to do. Second is E. I, the lens. When we record ourselves, human nature dictates that we stare at our own faces on the screen to see if we look nervous. Stop doing that. The person who needs your help is on the other side of that tiny black dot. Look straight into the camera lens. Connect with the dot, not your reflection. Third is A. Audience of one. Never speak to the internet. The internet is terrifying. Pretend you're sitting across from your absolute favorite customer. Picture her perfectly. For me, my ideal client isn't a faceless crowd. She's a 38-year-old registered nurse right here in Colorado who works grueling shifts, but she has a brilliant idea for a startup apparel brand. When I turn on my microphone, I'm not talking to the world. I'm having a one-on-one conversation with her. I shrink the room until it's just the two of us. Finally, L, lead from the heart. Drop the corporate jargon and the stiff script. Speak with honesty and kindness. Don't worry if you stumble over a word. People don't want to buy from or listen to a flawless robot. They want to connect with a real, flawed, deeply knowledgeable person who genuinely wants to share what they know. When I started using the real method, I stopped looking at myself and started looking at the person on the other side of the headphones. And do you know what happened? The terror didn't just become manageable. It started to disappear. And I get to watch this same transformation happen for my clients now. Let's go back to that 38-year-old nurse I mentioned. She had an incredible vision for a sustainable clothing line. She knew exactly what the market needed, but she was terrified to show her face. She told me, "I'm a nurse. I'm not a fashion CEO. Who am I to get on video and talk about sustainable manufacturing? She was hiding behind her old identity, doing exactly what I used to do. I gave her the real framework. I told her to get the reps in, look at the lens, talk only to the person who needed her clothes, and speak from the heart. Her first video, her voice was shaking. By her 10th video, she was passionately educating her audience. She stopped making it about her own insecurities, and she started making it about the people who desperately needed her line. She stepped out of the shadows, and today her company is thriving because she decided that hiding her idea was a disservice to the world. When you practice the real method, something incredible happens. In my life, it didn't just get confidence on camera. I built life confidence. Suddenly, I wasn't just speaking up on a microphone. I was speaking up with my clients. I was speaking up in my marriage. I was telling my husband what I needed, clearly and without apology. I was setting boundaries with family members and business colleagues that I'd been too afraid to set for years. The practice of being visible in my business unlocked a version of me that had been waiting to exhale for 30 years. I felt lighter. I felt powerful. Also, for the first time in my life, I actually felt beautiful. I realized that when you learn to trust your own voice in public, you start to trust it in private too. You stop second guessing your intuition. You stop apologizing for taking up space. My wish for you is not just that you grow your business through visibility. My wish for you is that you experience the freedom that comes when you stop hiding. Because we often tell women, be visible so you can be successful. But I want to tell you, be visible so you can be whole. If you're sitting at a desk right now, staring at a spreadsheet, wondering if you have what it takes, your voice is not just for you. Your visibility is provision. Your visibility is protection. And your visibility is a responsibility. The world is waiting to hear you. So please turn on the microphone, look straight into that camera lens, and just start. Thank you.
What a beautiful start to the session, Rachel. Thank you so much. Powerful, powerful presentation.
Thank you.
Now, we will bring you back on when we do the Q&A. Thank you for inspiring all of us to start the day with using our voices. You'll be back in a few minutes, okay?
Great.
Fantastic. What a beautiful start to the day. So we are going to bring on our next speaker, another gorgeous woman who's also coming to us from the United States. Gail, good to see you again, darling. The stage is yours. Introduce yourself, tell everybody where you are, and share your story.
Hi, everybody. I'm Gail Rudolph. I'm a USA Today Wall Street Journal bestselling author, and I'm coming to you from the beautiful state, sunny state of Florida. So I was once told I didn't deserve a raise because I received child support. That was the moment I realized something most professionals never see coming. Power isn't taken, it's leaked. See, the moment I realized I'd given my power away, it wasn't loud. There was no shouting, no slamming doors, no dramatic exits. It was quiet. I was sitting in a chair. My legs were crossed. My eyes were down, being told that I didn't deserve a raise because I received child support. I was in a small office where 2 desks were forced into a space that were meant for really only one, deep in the back of a bank building. No windows, those fluorescent lights that make everything look tired. I ran the foundation full time. I made sure it didn't just survive, but it grew. But over time, I noticed something very uncomfortable. I was doing all of the work, while my boss, who worked part-time, was getting all of the credit. So I did what every professional does. Once we exceeded our goals, our 3-year goals, in just a little over a year, I did what you should do. I went in and asked for a raise. I remember pulling my chair closer to his desk, feet planted, shoulders back, head held high. Wow, I laid out the numbers, the growth, the impact. I was prepared, professional, and boy, I was grounded. He looked at me straight in the eye, leaned back in his chair, and said, "You don't deserve a raise. You get child support, don't you?" And before I even responded, something happened. My shoulders dropped, my legs crossed, my voice softened, my eyes went down. I shrank, not because he yelled and not because he threatened me, but because my body remembered something that my mind hadn't yet admitted. Stay agreeable. Don't make this uncomfortable. Don't push too hard. Be grateful. That's the part no one teaches you. Power doesn't disappear in a dramatic explosion. It leaks through posture, through breath, through tone, through the quiet moments when we decide that it's safer to shrink than to stand. A few weeks later, I saw the agenda for the next board meeting. Salary discussion. I thought, he heard me. He finally heard me. The board did approve a raise. His, not mine. Not long after, I left that job. And later I learned they hired 3 people to replace me. 3! But that wasn't the moment that stayed with me. What stayed with me was this. No one took my power. I gave it away. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Here's what took me years to admit. I wasn't powerless. I was trained. Trained to be agreeable. Trained to smooth edges. Trained to make sure everyone else felt comfortable. That's what being professional meant, right? Be competent, but not threatening. Be confident, but not intimidating. Be valuable, but not inconvenient. And sometimes the world rewards you for shrinking. The person who doesn't rock the boat gets promoted. The person who keeps the peace gets praised. The person who makes everyone else feel comfortable gets invited back. Especially if you're a woman, especially if you're a minority, but especially if you were raised to believe that being safer is better than being powerful. So most people think power belongs to somebody else. But here's what I eventually discovered after decades of studying leadership and influence. Power is not something you take. It's something you stop leaking. When we hear the word power, we picture dominance, someone who's controlling or forceful. That's not power. Dominance is just insecurity wearing a microphone. Real power looks different. The most powerful people in the room aren't the loudest. They're the most regulated. They don't rush. They don't over-explain. They don't chase agreement. They hold presence. And presence reorganizes the room. Real power is control of yourself when the room tries to control you. You see, in every charged moment, you have 2 options. You can collapse or you can regulate. I call it power up or power down, but not the way you might think. Power up is not getting louder. It's refusing to shrink. It's the split-second decision where your body wants to fold and you don't let it. It's lifting your chin when every instinct says to lower it. It's holding eye contact half a second longer than your nervous system is telling you to do. Power up isn't performance. It's defiance against collapse. And power down is not shrinking. Shrinking is fear. Powering down is actually dangerous. It's when you slow down instead of speeding up. It's when you go quiet instead of over-explaining. It's when you let silence sit there and refuse to rescue the room from discomfort. And power down says, I don't need to chase you to influence. Most people do neither. They swing between collapse, and aggression. Small or sharp. Invisible or intimidating. That's not range. That's nervousness in two costumes. Power up, power down, it creates a range. And the range is what makes the room shift. After years of studying power dynamics, I realized something simple. Leadership is never positional. Leadership is behavioral. When people stop leaking power, they begin to lead. But how do you lead? Well, the way I remember it is by spelling out lead. The L stands for lift your presence. Leadership starts before you say a single word. Your posture, your eye contact, your pace. Your brain and everyone else's brain in the room reads those signals instantly. So leadership begins with presence. Plant your feet, open your shoulders, take up the space you deserve. Because shrinking trains the room to overlook you. Presence trains the room to listen. Lead. The E in lead is expand your voice. Power leaks through language more than anywhere else. You've heard it. I just think. I could be wrong, but sorry to interrupt. Those phrases quietly undermine your authority. Leadership doesn't require being louder. It requires being clearer. A clear voice, a steady tone, words that land without apology. This clarity creates influence. Lead, L-E-A, align everything. And here's where leadership becomes powerful, alignment. Align your mindset, your voice, and your body. I like to call it my MVB, your most valuable behavior, because your most valuable behavior envelops your mindset, your voice, and your body. People don't respond to what you intend. They respond to how you show up. Your body registers before your words do. Your tone lands before your logic does. When your mindset, voice, and body align, people trust you. And trust is always the foundation for influence. L-E-A-D, direct the energy of the room. The most powerful leaders don't dominate rooms, they regulate them. They know when to power up and when to power down. Power up when clarity is needed, power down when silence moves a conversation forward. Because silence creates gravity. And when you stay grounded, the room regulates around you. So tomorrow morning, when you walk into a meeting, remember one word: lead. Lift your presence, expand your voice, align your MVB, most valuable behavior, your mindset, your voice and body. Direct the energy in the room, because leadership doesn't start with your title. It starts with your behavior. So let me show you what this looks like. I was working with Kate. She was smart, strategic, and very highly capable. And like many high performers, she had learned to make herself smaller than she really needed to be. It's not because she lacked confidence. It was because she was rewarded for shrinking, like most of us are. When Kate started practicing powering up and powering down, changing her posture, her pace, her silence, it felt awkward. Because when you've spent years shrinking to stay safe, presence feels risky. About 2 weeks later, she and her boss, Nathan, were hosting a dinner to gather insight on a critical project. It was a private room in a very upscale restaurant, long, polished table. When she walked into the room, she noticed something immediately. She was the only woman in the room. Every volunteer there was male. Nathan welcomed everyone, introduced Kate, and then, casually, unintentionally, he said, "Kate is here to take notes." Her body reacted before her brain did. Flushed, tension, heat rising up the back of her neck. Her mind started racing. Do I shut down? Do I correct him? How do I protect my dignity without making this awkward? She felt that familiar pull. Collapse or push? Shrinking or aggression? And then she remembered lead by powering up and powering down. Instead of reacting, she chose to power up. She didn't slam the table. She didn't laugh nervously. She didn't shrink. She leaned back slightly in her chair, placed her arms on the empty chair next to her, lifted her chin, made eye contact, and let silence stretch just long enough. Then she said calmly, "Yes, that's correct. I will be taking notes, since I'll be spearheading the strategy for this project. So please speak clearly, and I may interrupt for clarity so I can make sure that this project is successful." No rush, no apology, no edge, just regulation. Throughout the dinner, she interrupted where needed. She made steady eye contact. She leaned back instead of forward. She wasn't overpowering the room, she was regulating it. The very next morning, Nathan called her into his office. "Kate," he said, "I just want you to know how impressed I was with you last night. It's time we start talking about a promotion." It didn't require her getting louder. She didn't become aggressive. She didn't dominate anybody. She stopped leaking. And the room recognized around her. That's leadership without force. That's power up, power down. Not dominance, not volume, regulation. And when you regulate yourself, the room adjusts. That small windowless office taught me something I didn't understand at the time. No one took my power, I gave it away. And the moment we realized that, we gained something far more dangerous than power: choice. choice to lift your presence, choice to expand your voice, choice to align your most valuable behaviors, and choice to direct the energy of the room. In other words, the choice to lead. Because power was never something someone else has to give you. It's something you need to stop leaking. And the moment you stop leaking power, the room doesn't get louder. It gets quieter because people start listening. And tomorrow morning, that choice is yours. Thank you.
Gail, thank you, thank you, thank you. Wow. What a powerful presentation. So many nuggets of wisdom from the presentation you gave. You know, body language is everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to come back and unpack that and pick your brain. I'll introduce the next speaker, but thank you so much, Gail. Absolutely beautiful. Oh, wow. What an incredible morning, Sue. Welcome to the tribe.
Hi there. How are you?
Wonderful to finally meet you.
It's great to meet you. It's great to be here.
So you know the drill. Please introduce yourself, tell us where you are, and share your story with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. It's an honor to be here. My name is Sue Hoppin, and I am joining you from Northern Virginia, just right outside of Washington, D.C. I mean, this is, I was telling Gertrude, it's an honor to be sharing before this global community of inspirational women. But I really want to begin with a moment that to me didn't feel very inspiring at the time. I was strapped to a polygraph machine, and that would probably unnerve a lot of people. But sitting in that cold, bleak room across from the FBI interrogator, I felt nothing but elation. I mean, after 14 years of waiting, this was the last hurdle between me and my dream job. Every click and scratch of the needles gliding across that paper, measuring my responses to a barrage of questions felt like progress. Each mark on that chart meant I was one step closer to the end of a very long journey. Though it had taken me more than a decade after graduating college, I was finally moving along the path I had imagined for myself. My husband's military career had brought us back to Washington, D.C., my town. And with this interview, I felt like I was finally picking up where I'd left off before military life sent us to assignments around the globe. Mentally, I was already checking off that box, get an adult job. The weeks after the polygraph exam dragged on interminably, right? After years of volunteer work and part-time jobs with low hourly wages, I began imagining how a real job, one with a salary, benefits, and stability, might change our lives. When the call finally came, my nerves were already frayed. Congratulations on passing the interview, Ms. Hoppin. We'd like to offer you a position as a counterintelligence analyst with the FBI. Euphoria for about 2 seconds because he wasn't finished speaking. Someone else had been offered the job in Washington, D.C., but they wanted to offer me the exact same job somewhere else. After 6 months in the interview process, this is where we had landed. I interrupted before he could finish. Is the job in the D.C. area? No, he said, but I think you'll be really happy with it. The tears were already welling up. Thank you, I managed. I appreciate your consideration, but I'm not in a position to move for the job. And that was the end of my dream career with the FBI. It ended before it started, and it wasn't because I failed, but because my life circumstances made accepting it impossible. At the time, I told myself I was simply doing what a good military spouse does. My husband's job took precedence. I needed to be the stable parent for our son until he was in school full-time. So I waited my turn. But in that moment, it felt like something deeper had happened. Once again, my career had been derailed before it ever really began. For a long time, I interpreted moments like that as personal failure. Maybe I wasn't persistent enough. Maybe I wasn't networking the right way. Maybe I should have made different choices early on in life. When you encounter enough professional interruptions, it becomes really easy to internalize them. You start believing that the problem must be you. But the reality for many women, particularly those navigating mobility, caregiving, or cultural expectations, is that we're often trying to build careers inside systems that were designed for an entirely different workforce, a workforce that assumed stability, one location, linear careers, and very often someone else at home managing the rest of your life. When your life doesn't fit that model, the system interprets your path as inconsistent. But inconsistency is not the same thing as lack of capability. In fact, The women navigating the most complex life paths are often the ones developing the most sophisticated skills: adaptability, resilience, strategic thinking, cross-cultural communication. We simply don't label those skills correctly. And when we fail to label them, we fail to value them. Now, my context was military life. Frequent moves were part of that reality. But at the heart of it, it really isn't about the geography. It's about the interruption. And I've come to realize that interruption is something women across the world understand deeply. Let me ask you something. How many of you have had to restart your career at least once because of life circumstances? That moment where you realize you're not starting from scratch, but everyone else thinks you are. Career interruptions, cultural barriers, caregiving responsibilities, mobility challenges, visa limitations, economic instability. Different contexts, same pattern. Highly capable women navigating systems that were not designed with us in mind. For years, I internalized my professional setbacks. Maybe I needed to try harder, network better, rebrand myself more effectively. But eventually something shifted. I realized it wasn't just happening to me. It was happening to thousands of women navigating mobility and structural barriers. And that realization changed my life. I stopped asking, why can't I make this work? And I started asking, why does the system make this so difficult? That shift from self-blame to structural awareness is the beginning of advocacy. I founded the National Military Spouse Network in 2010, not because I wanted to start an organization, but because I founded it because I saw a pattern. Highly educated women were underemployed, not due to lack of skill, but because policies, hiring practices, and assumptions had not caught up to modern realities. And here's what I've learned. This is not a military spouse issue. This is a global workforce issue. Women everywhere are navigating systems built in another era. And when you see that clearly, frustration transforms into responsibility. Over the years, my journey from disruptive professional to national advocate has taught me 3 powerful lessons. Lessons that apply no matter where you live. Number 1, your lived experience is data. I always knew my story wasn't unique. This was reinforced when I started speaking openly and heard the same story over and over again. That's when I realized patterns matter. When your lived experience is shared by many, it becomes evidence of a systemic issue. How many of you have ever been told something like, that's just how it works. That's a trade-off. That's a cost of flexibility. It'd be easy to write off your issues as personal, but when similar stories repeat across countries, industries, and cultures, it's no longer personal misfortune. It's structural design. Let me give you a practical example. When I first began speaking publicly about military spouse employment, the conversation was framed as a personal hardship story. People would say, that must be really frustrating, or that's just the cost of military life, and you knew what you were signing up for. But when we began collecting data, real workforce statistics, and economic impact, the narrative shifted. We discovered that military spouses experience unemployment rates up to 7 times higher than the national average. We discovered that underemployment was just as significant. Highly educated professionals were working far below their qualifications simply because employers didn't understand portable careers or relocation. Suddenly, this wasn't just an emotional story. It was an economic one, a workforce issue, a talent pipeline issue. And when leaders began to see it that way, doors opened that had previously been closed. Corporations started examining their hiring practices. Policymakers began looking at licensure portability. Organizations began investing in leadership development and remote work strategies. The story did not change, the framing did. And that's one of the most powerful tools that advocates have. Your story is not a complaint, it's information. Number 2, passion is powerful, but structure creates change. When I launched the National Military Spouse Network, I could have built a space to vent. Instead, I built infrastructure, leadership development programs, professional summits, mentorship pipelines, policy engagement strategies, because emotion attracts attention, but structure produces results. Advocacy that lasts moves from awareness to architecture. 3, you need to reframe the narrative. One of the most important shifts I made was moving from deficit language to value language. Instead of positioning women like me as disadvantaged, I positioned us as underleveraged. We're not asking for special treatment. We're highlighting untapped talent. Narrative matters. How you describe a problem shapes how others respond to it. You don't need to found an organization to begin advocating. You don't need a title. You need clarity and commitment. You need to define the problem clearly. You need to find your community, study the system, build cross-sector relationships, and commit to the long game. Because structural change takes time, but progress compounds. Over the past decade, actually over the past nearly 2 decades, I've had the privilege of advising policymakers, corporations, and nonprofit leaders, and something interesting happens in those conversations. At first, people think they're hearing about a niche issue, but as we talk longer, they recognize the pattern. We've said it before: mobility, caregiving, nonlinear careers, global workforces. This isn't just a military spouse issue, it's a future of work. Disruption shows us where systems are rigid and where redesign is necessary. Before I close, I want you to take a moment and think about the biggest professional pivot in your life. At the time, it probably didn't feel like an opportunity. It probably felt a lot like a problem. But many of the most impactful leaders I know can trace their influence back to a moment exactly like that. I often think back to that moment sitting in the FBI office, listening to the agent explain that the job I'd waited for 14 years wasn't in Washington, D.C. At the time, it felt like a door closing. But hindsight has a remarkable way of rewriting the meaning of our hardest moments. Because if I had taken that job, my life would have followed a completely different trajectory. I wouldn't have founded the National Military Spouse Network. I wouldn't have spent the last 2 decades working with policymakers, corporations, and advocates. And I certainly would not be sitting here today speaking to this incredible global community. What I thought was a closed door was actually a pivot point, one that forced me to ask a different question. Not, what job should I have, but rather, what problem am I uniquely positioned to help solve? And when women move from asking, how do I fit into this system, to asking, how should this system evolve? This is when leadership begins. So whatever disruption brought you here today, migration, motherhood, caregiving, career breaks, starting over, ask yourself this: is this the end of the professional story you imagined? Or is this the beginning of a much more powerful one? Because what once felt like interruption for me may actually be the beginning of influence. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. What a fantastic story. You completely turned that around.
Yeah, by luck, right?
Oh, it's not by luck. You did this. And this is the thing that women forget, right? Sometimes when things feel like they're falling apart, they're just falling into place.
But it's hard to have faith when you don't know where the next step is. And hindsight is such a great gift, because you're like, okay, it's great. But when you're in it, it doesn't feel wonderful.
No, but now it does. So we're going to come back to you in a few minutes and unpack more questions. Let's bring on our last speaker for this session. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Wow. What an incredible lineup. Becky, how are you?
I am well. How are you?
Wonderful to have you with us. Please introduce yourself, tell everybody where you are, and share your story with us today.
I'm Becky Kameen. I'm in Southeast Missouri in the United States, and we're having beautiful weather today, and I'm thankful for spring. My story is one of domestic violence and where I'm going from there. I lived with domestic violence for 25 years, and I didn't know. Not because I was in denial, not because I was weak, but because no one had ever explained what domestic violence actually looks like in real life. I thought abuse was a drunk man beating up his wife and kids, and that's not what I was living with. I was living in an invisible cage. And invisible cages are dangerous because everyone walks past them. Nobody sees, including the people inside. From the outside, my life looked normal. I was married, I had 9 children, we homeschooled, we worked hard, we smiled in public. But inside our home, every part of life was balanced on a razor thin edge. Sometimes everything was fine. And sometimes what had been fine yesterday or even an hour ago was all of a sudden very not fine. What we wore, what we said, who we spoke to, how money was spent, whether we could have an opinion, whether we could ask questions, whether we could even meet his eyes. All he had to do was get a look on his face, and we knew, and we were afraid. But I didn't call that abuse because society had taught me to look for bruises, for shouting, for dramatic violence. And certainly that is, but that's not all it is. No one ever told me that domestic violence is not defined by bruises. It's defined by fear and control and by silence. I had no self esteem. I had no voice. I had no agency. And still, it never occurred to me that this was abuse. That misunderstanding didn't just confuse me, it protected the abuse. It protected him and it kept us trapped. There came a night when I could not go on. I was sitting on my bed, staring at the floor, empty, hopeless, completely depleted. I had 9 children. I couldn't leave them with him, but I also couldn't keep living like this. My daughters came into my room quietly and asked if I wanted to go out for ice cream. We never went out for treats. We didn't have money for that. But that night we did. We sat outside under the stars. I was crying. My daughters didn't know what to say. It was a beautiful night, the kind of night I always try to teach my children to notice the wonder of the stars and the peace of nature. But that night I couldn't see any of it. Later, I learned that the farmer that we worked for, who paid us in produce, had told my girls he was worried I might take my own life. And think about that. Someone on the outside could see how close the edge was. And still, the issue was not the abuse, it was my mental state. That's the danger of silence. Silence hides urgency, it hides harm. Silence hides the responsibility that we all share. When I finally saw a counselor, she explained domestic violence to me for the first time. Not just physical abuse, but psychological, financial, spiritual, sexual, verbal, emotional. I remember reading about it and just getting physically sick. Every page described my life. There was nothing about my marriage that wasn't abusive. And that's when I realized something that changed everything. Silence doesn't protect victims. Silence protects abusers. So I started talking, and immediately something else became painfully clear. People didn't ask, "What is he doing?" or "How can I help?" They asked, "Well, what did you do?" Like, what had I done to deserve it? And what could I do better to stop it? And then came all the helpful advice. Clean the house better, look prettier, have more sex, keep the children quiet, don't do anything that might upset him. In other words, I was made responsible for both the abuse and stopping it. And that's when I understood something bigger than my own story. Domestic violence doesn't continue because victims are silent or they don't just leave. Domestic violence survives because the rest of us don't recognize our role. And here's the part most people miss. No one saved us. There's no dramatic rescue, no hero moment. What changed our lives were small, intentional acts by ordinary people. An accountant helped untangle financial chaos and let me pay with eggs from my farm. I was desperate, and she believed me. She was the first one who actually believed me. And instead of requiring cash or credit or a payment plan, she let me pay with what I had available, my eggs. And that let me use the little cash I had on critical things. A neighbor listened and hugged me over and over and over. She encouraged me, cried with me, shared stories. She made me laugh again. She inspired me and kept me going when I was overcome. A martial artist taught my sons that a man's strength and skill is used to protect, not harm. When my sons acted out the rage and hurt they felt inside, he was there with both love and discipline to redirect that negative energy into something positive. And my sons were changed. Our farmer friend not only paid us for our work in produce, but he also gave us all the unsold produce every week after the farmer's market. That food fed my family when I had $8 to last for a month. My daughters and I preserved hundreds of jars of tomatoes and salsa, sweet corn, beets, pickles. Those provisions saved us during the worst of the financial abuse. Another gentleman spent time with the husband, attempting to counsel him, confront behaviors, help him see how destructive he was being to his own family. He was why the financial abuse came to an end. They didn't change their lives. They didn't become experts. They didn't tell me what I should and shouldn't do. They simply used what they already had intentionally. And each act was a difference between staying trapped and becoming empowered. So here's my challenge to you. If you believe domestic violence doesn't involve you, that it's none of your business, that belief is exactly what allows it to continue. You don't need training. You don't need permission. You don't need to rescue anyone. You already have something. Your listening, your skill, your profession, your influence, your presence, your voice, your unsold produce. Find the thing you're already doing and use it intentionally for someone who needs empowering. Take over a lunch and listen, hug, comfort. Get a couple of guys and fix her car. Teach her boys the basics. Electricians, plumbers, construction workers, teach her how to do basic home repair. If you're in a white-collar profession, set aside hours in accounting, tax prep, counseling, law, medicine, whatever, for pro bono work. Mentor the victims. Just having somebody there is a tremendous comfort and source of strength. It gave me courage to keep going. We once had a gentleman come to our house to teach my oldest son how to shave. We all crammed into the upstairs bathroom, cracking jokes, teasing brothers about peach fuzz. It was great. It was fun. It was safe. And it showed my son something powerful, what care looks like. No act of kindness is too small because every kindness gives power back to those who've had it taken away. Domestic violence does not survive because victims are silent or don't just leave. It survives because we don't see. We stay comfortable. And the moment we choose discomfort, the moment we stop looking away and choose to see, the moment we decide that kindness is always our business, everything changes. Thank you.
Wow, Becky, what an incredible story. You know, I've heard this story so many times, but what you are doing with your life and with this story to educate people, to realize that it's just those little random acts of kindness, right?
Yes, yes, yes. Done
That does make
intentionally.
a difference.
Right, right. No agenda, no, you know, we're going to do this because just be nice. Just just be nice. That makes such a huge difference.
And this is a problem we can all stop. We can all be part of the solution to stopping domestic violence if we are present and aware.
Yes.
Whew, what an incredible story. You move me to tears every time I hear you speak, honestly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies, thank you for launching day 2 in such a powerful way. You know, each and every one of your contributions is just so incredible. I just feel so humbled and honored that I found you, that I brought you to my community so that you can inspire, you can share your stories and show how life can actually be when we show up and when we use our voices. And this is what Her Story is all about. It's how can we take our experiences and shine a light to the world to say, this is how we can be. So we're now going to unpack each and every one of your stories. I have a set of questions that I had prepared for each and every one of you because I had an essence of what you were bringing to the table. But I also want you to each contribute and comment on each other's presentations. Let's have a bit of a dialogue, a forum where we can unpack what we've heard this morning. So we'll start at the top with the first speaker, Rachel.
Hello.
What you have done with your story is just amazing. You know, you were an introvert who realized that if you didn't change, if you didn't make a difference and use your voice in a different way, all of the people that you had employed who were relying on you for their income would have been disenfranchised. Now, it took a lot of courage, you know, hearing the sound of your own voice. And I say this to all of the women that I coach and mentor. It's horrible when you first hear yourself speaking. It's like, oh, who is that? Is that how I speak, right?
Yes.
Because we're not used to hearing our own voices. But the more you speak and you listen back to your voice, the more comfortable you get with it. And it sounds to me like you learned to be perfectly imperfect.
Yes.
You showed up, you looked at that camera, but the most important thing that I got out of your presentation is you remembered who you were speaking to.
Mm-hmm.
You were speaking to one person, that one client, that 38-year-old you mentioned, right?
Yes.
And it's the same when you're speaking on stage in front of 5,000 people. I remember one of my mentors is Jack Canfield from Chicken Soup of the Soul. And I had a session with Jack when I was speaking in front of the first 5,000 people, group. And then I had spoken to 500 people, and multiply that by 10, I was petrified. And he said to me, Gertrude, 5,000 people are 10 groups of 500 people.
Mm.
So when you get on stage, you look to the left and you say, there's 500 people here, 500 here, 500. And that's exactly what you're saying, right?
Yes.
You focused on that one person. And this is what's happening even as we're presenting online. We're not talking to millions of people right now. It's one person.
Yes.
But when this video hits the internet and we're already on YouTube, we're on LinkedIn, we're talking to hundreds, we're talking to millions of people. So you spoke about the moment when you realized that hiding yourself actually limited the success of the women in your team.
Yeah.
How can leaders recognize when their own invisibility is holding their businesses back and their mission back?
Yeah. I mean, I think ceilings present themselves to you, as a business owner. I think realizing, the money isn't coming in the way we expect. People aren't hearing our message. People don't know enough about us. We're not getting enough referrals. Whatever those things might be, they present themselves to you pretty harshly. And we go through roller coasters as business owners all the time, and realizing that those ceilings are presenting themselves to you and trying to figure out what that next right thing to do is can be really difficult. And I just believe in the power of the universe, the power of God, however you want to kind of state it. It will put something in front of you that you need to hear. And that's what happened to me that day. Listening to that speaker in my coaching call, someone who is literally speaking directly to me about what I needed to hear so that I could amplify our voice for our company was very, very helpful. And I just think too, speaking to that one person not only will help you as you grow as a leader, with marketing or with sales or getting your message out into the world, but it will also help that one person reconnect back to you. So very logically and practically, if I'm saying, I see you, I'm speaking to you, not, hey, internet, hey, guys, hey, everybody. Now, all of a sudden, someone might feel very connected back to me because they feel like I'm talking to them. And so all of that kind of works together. But yes, I believe that something put that right in my face that day, and I needed to hear it.
It's just beautiful. Any comments, ladies? If you want to say anything, just put your hand up and I'll call you up. Let's give Rachel some feedback.
Well, I also just wanted to say that I very much connected with so many stories that I heard today, coming from a corporate background before I started my own business. Like really learning how to lead as a woman in a workplace is very, very difficult, and learning how to kind of step up, be an advocate for myself, whether that's personally or professionally. I think all of your stories just resonated so well with me too. So thank you for sharing today.
Awesome.
Something I thought was a common thread among all of us is courage.
Mhm.
It takes courage to do every single thing that everybody's talking about. Be brave, right?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And you can't be brave unless you're afraid of it, right?
Right.
It's comfortable.
Right.
You just do it.
But with your story, Becky, it felt like it was more survival, right? Like, I don't know that you thought of yourself as being brave. I just think, I recognize that you were very brave, but it just seems like you were just trying to survive.
For a good amount of the time. Yeah. Yeah, that's all it was survival. And like I said, just having people do random nice things, just that gave me the courage to keep going. It was, yeah. They were such a blessing.
What I love is we talk so much about kindness, but all of us have seen kindness to ourselves too.
Yes.
And Becky, you talked about kindness to everybody else, but you were also kind to yourself. And everybody here that has shared their story has been kind to themselves, because it's so easy to become so overly critical and think that we have to be perfect, that we don't move beyond that.
Yeah.
And that's just amazing in all the stories that were here today. We all move beyond something.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Very good point.
Now, Gail, let's go to your story. Your story about being denied a raise because you received child support was powerful. Looking back, what do you wish every woman understood about recognizing when their power is leaking in professional spaces?
I think that we have such a misconception of power that we don't realize that it leaks, that it's something that we already have. Mm-hmm. And when we realize we're already empowered and we make the choices in the moment, we've been taught so much to give power away. Yeah. I love the analogy of a peacock, right? It can have its feathers full formed and out, or tucked in a train behind its back. It's still the same bird. And power for me, I had to learn it was a dance. And, if we power up all the time, we're trying to be a man, and we're not a man. And we shouldn't be a man. Our femininity is something that's amazing and unique that we bring to the table. And when we learn to regulate the room by powering up or powering down, being the same bird, the bird doesn't change. A peacock doesn't change. If we don't change, we just realize that we're just doing different steps to the dance so that we're not leaking our power. And if everybody could understand that, I think that our influence would be able to rise, and people that need to be heard would be heard.
That is so true. You know, when you were talking about leaning back, it reminded me of a story when I lived in South Africa. So I lived in apartheid South Africa before independence. And I lived in Cape Town, and Cape Town was what's called a colored preferential area. So to live in Cape Town, someone my skin tone could never get a job because I'm African and colored people were biracial. So they were all grouped in Cape Town. And I was in the IT department, only Black woman in a boardroom full of men. And every time it was time for tea and coffee, my boss would look to me and say, Gertrude, it's time for tea and coffee. And I remember the first time he said it, in my head thinking, what the F? And I remember thinking, I'm going to make a joke of this. And I crossed my legs and I leaned back and I said, yes, Jack, I take one black with 2 sugars. And he turned red and everybody laughed. I had to break his pattern of behavior because he was used to dealing with a Black woman as a servant. You were either the domestic help in the house or you were the cleaner.
Yep.
And he would treat me like that at the board table. I killed him with kindness. I made a joke of it. I would go home and cry and tell my husband what had happened. But in the boardroom, nobody ever saw that side of me. So you're right. Something happens when you just change your posture. Just
Change your
lean
posture.
back. Take up that space if you have to. I thought that was so, so powerful.
That's actually what the animal kingdom does. You know, they spread out, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I walk into so many boardrooms and, you know, the men come in with a pad of paper and their iPhone. And we walk in with all these bags, all these things, and then we pull them all close to us and then we sit like this with our legs crossed. We don't want to take up space. No, spread out, lean on the chair next to you. It's a powerful move to lean on the chair next to you.
I love it. Let's go to you, Sue. You described the moment when you realized that your experience wasn't a personal failure, but part of a systematic pattern affecting many women. What helped you make that shift in perspective?
Just speaking to so many people, right? And like people that I really, really admired. And at the time, like my husband has been retired for a while. And so at the time when he came up, I didn't know a lot of military spouses who had careers. And then just speaking to them, it was almost like, how did you break the pattern? How did you do this miraculous thing? She's like, I didn't do anything. I made hard choices. Like we chose to live apart. I chose not to go to my children's activities. And so it was, when you started speaking to more women, you're like, oh, this affects a lot of people. It's just the way they react. Like to Gail's point, we always had the power and they made different choices. And so I think that I believe that we only had limited options available to us. It was like the family would stay together. We weren't living apart. We weren't going to do this. We weren't, and they were like, no, you just have to break out of the mold about the societal expectations. And you just have to decide if I want a career and you want a career and your career is going to move you to wherever, we may be living apart. And, the kids aren't going to have a perfect childhood because I'm not going to every single event that they have. And I'm like, there's another way to live. It was really weird. It was not nearly as dramatic as Becky's, but it was just the expectation, like just getting rid of those expectations and what you thought the world should be like. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, it doesn't have to be this way.
No, and every one of our stories is valid.
Oh, yeah.
Different life experiences, they are all valid. You had your priorities. You wanted to keep your family together. You didn't want to move to a different town. And so you did it and you created a path that didn't exist. Now you're helping so many other women in the military to do the same. So kudos to you for that.
But I think the amazing thing is that we can take it so far, but it's the women who come after us. They're amazing. Like they, like where our baseline was, they're already like 50 steps ahead. And so where they're building from is so much further than where we started. And I think that's the powerful thing is, like they don't have to reinvent the wheel. And if they learn that faster, they'll be more effective instead of trying to think of, because with the military, our benefit system is built from like a 1950s kind of mentality where, oh, there's a trailing spouse, traditionally a woman, and if she wants to make a little, these are their words, pin money, then she'll come out and do a little part-time job. And I'm like, no, this is America. Like, even in the States, you need two salaries to live, not to thrive, just to live.
Right.
And so it's so frustrating that, that archaic notion that a military is built on having a trailing spouse who will just stay home and keep the home fires burning. It's just
crazy.
It's insane.
All that human capital just wasted.
Yeah.
Insane. Any feedback for Sue, ladies?
I'm so proud of you.
Yeah.
Taking something that was just really pushing a lot of people down and turning it around into something that lifts them up. Just way to go.
That
you
means
go,
a lot,
girl.
Becky.
Yeah, and powerful story. Yeah.
And thanks for not sticking to tradition, and breaking out of that mold. So many times it's just, we don't see that. And thank you for doing that, because I think you paved the way. I mean, I have a daughter and you're paving the way for her. And thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah.
This is very emotional because everybody's so strong, and you're like it's almost like that scene in Legally Blonde where they're giving each other props.
I love it. I love it. Becky, let's go to your story. You talked about living in an invisible cage where abuse wasn't recognized because it didn't match the stereotype of violence.
Right.
What signs should communities learn to recognize so that they can identify this kind of hidden abuse earlier?
Well, any sign is going to be really subtle, and you've got to be paying attention. It would be things like dropped eye, like making smaller, like what Gail was talking about, making yourself smaller. You drop your gaze, you drop your head. I was talking to a gentleman one time, and his wife, I just met the two of them. This was the first time I had ever met them. And I asked her if she was a stay-at-home wife or if she worked. And she said, well, she couldn't be a stay-at-home wife. If she stayed home with him, she would kill him. And when she said that, he put his hands behind his back, he dropped his head and took a step backwards. And I knew that motion. I had done that. I recognized that. And immediately I knew he was in a verbally, emotionally abusive relationship. And
it's not just women.
Right, exactly. Sometime later, I went to a fatality seminar, homicide seminar, and one of the main indicators of fatality in domestic violence is joking about killing a spouse, especially to strangers.
Oh, wow.
So, things like that are the things that you need to be aware of. They're going to be really subtle. Like the abusive spouse will insult the victim and laugh it off as a joke in public, really subtle things. But once you see them, you don't have to make a big production of anything. Just be a support.
Yeah.
Do something, nice. And that's really all we need.
It's half the battle won over there. Wow.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the top. Rachel, your real method: rehearse, eye the lens, audience of one, lead from the heart, is incredibly practical. What step do you see people struggling with the most, and why?
I think leading from the heart tends to be the hardest thing to master. I think finding a way to have your authentic voice come out takes a minute to kind of figure out how to get out into the world. even I started a podcast back in 2023, and it took me the better part of 2.5 years to really sound like myself. Like if you knew me in my personal life versus you listened to my podcast, I think my podcast producer actually said something to me at one point about 2.5 years in, and he was like, I finally hear you on this podcast. And I think there's a lot of hesitation to put your true personality out there for fear that people might not like it. So we hesitate, or we put on a little bit of a show, or we hold back certain things, or we try to be very PC, or we don't say certain words. And I think the most important thing to understand is that your most ideal customer wants to hear all of those things from you. They want to know the true you. And it's not until you expose all of that to them will they really start being attracted to you. That's when a lot started to shift for me inside my business.
That's awesome. Oh, Gail, you describe leadership as behavioral rather than positional. Can you share an example of how someone without a leadership title can still shift the dynamic in the room?
Oh, yes. I love this because so many times we think we need a title to be a leader. I can tell you that is not true. If you don't believe that, take a look at a household that has children that are misbehaving, right? They're leading the entire room. So just because you don't have a title doesn't mean that you're not leading. And I think that leading makes sure that first of all, I think it's our mindset that leading is something that we have to realize that we're doing. See, we're not passive. Every word matters. Every action matters. And we tend to think that we are invisible. And when we don't see ourselves as invisible, we can lead. And we can lead in a way that has massive, massive impact. So I think that mindset shift of being able to realize how powerful we are, and that our choice to be able to share our voices like we're doing today makes a huge impact on the world.
That is
I
so
even think,
cool.
like the story that you shared, where you don't necessarily have to have the title, but once you show that you are a leader, I think that is when you get the title.
Exactly. Yeah. And we're so scared because we're so used to shrinking, especially as females, right? That the thing that we've learned is that we power up in the wrong way, that we do that dominance and we get called that horrible B word, right? And that's not what it is. It's about holding your presence in the room. It takes powering down to be able to have that conversation, that dance to happen.
That's interesting. Becky. Oh, actually, no, I'll go to Sue first. So you emphasize that lived experience is data. How can individuals turn their personal stories into incredible evidence that drives policy and organizational change?
So we did it through white papers. We started, I was listening to people, and, thank goodness there is a lot of data around military experiences and military spouse experiences, because the Department of Defense collects it. And our frustration was it was not granular enough to really share the experience of what was actually happening. So they gave enough data to, make the front page of the post, but not enough data to actually solve the problem. And so we started speaking to people, and I'm like, wait a minute. Every time I talk to somebody, they're always like, oh, military spouse unemployment is really high. I'm like, yeah, I get it. I got it. Like for the past 10 years, you've been saying it's really high.
Yes.
And so we're like, I'm sick of waiting for someone to solve it. So we started releasing these white papers written very, they can just start making recommendations. I know that sounds so simple, but that's what we did. We started writing white papers with recommendations, and every white paper every year, we give like 3 to 5 recommendations. I'm like, if you really want to solve it, do these 3 to 5 things. And then we recognized that like people would talk to us. We'd have roundtables, and we would convene people who had stories to tell. And then we would send them on Capitol Hill. We're like, we will teach you how to tell your story. but like our data is fine, but you need the anecdotes. We need the anecdotes plus the stories. So we will tell you how to tell your story, and you can advocate about anything else you want the rest of the year. But this one day, please advocate on spouse employment. And then we would unleash these people on Capitol Hill, and they would go visit all their legislators. And then we would get phone calls, and they're like, why are we seeing so many military spouses on Capitol Hill on this one day? And then they would like send them down. And then staffers would call us and say, hey, they left behind this white paper, and my member really wants to introduce and wants to help with this. What do you think about this legislation? So it's really interesting. I think what we're experiencing in the US right now, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, is a dearth of civics education. And so I think people have forgotten that they have a role to play, and that like all these congressional members work for us.
Yeah.
So we have a role to play, and that it is not even just okay to go. We should be on Capitol Hill, or if we don't live in the DC area, we should be visiting their district offices. We should remind them what we want, because like we're over them doing what they want to do. You work for us. Like, do what we need you to do. Like, make our lives better, right?
Yes.
Yep.
I love it.
And so I think that's the best thing. It's like you empower women, they do amazing things. And it's almost like we can't be there for every person. But if I touch somebody and then they go and they teach that to their group, then we're just paying it forward, and we all benefit, like, right? So it's really very organic, and it's really powerful because it's not driven by one person. It's just giving voice to everyone.
But learning how to tell the story is the magical thing, that the ingredients to your work. I love it.
Because we like to joke that, like, give a military spouse a microphone, all we do is we do verbal diarrhea. And we have to say, like, we don't care. What do you do?
Oh my gosh. I love it.
It's funny.
This is a powerful story. My goodness. Now, Becky, your story highlighted how small acts of kindness from ordinary people changed everything for you and your children.
Yes.
What are some practical ways that people can support survivors in their communities?
Oh gosh, that's as individual as everybody. Everybody has something
To give.
that's a part of them already, whether it's their profession or their sphere of influence or the people that they know, their specialty. Like I said, electricians and plumbers and construction people. Just show her how to do basic repairs. That was something that was just endlessly frustrating to me. Was, here I am, I've got 9 kids, we're running a farm. If my tractor doesn't work, we're like, frozen, right? We can't do anything. So, I don't know how to fix a stopped up toilet, or, get my lights to work again, or whatever. I don't know. So, whatever your sphere of influence is, just be aware. And if you're an electrician and you know that something is going on, just call her. And, you need any electrical work done? Is the storm causing any problems? Or whatever, if you know how to handle cars. My car right now is a wreck. I wish I knew somebody who could show me what to do with it, but that's the kind of thing that we need as survivors. We need somebody that knows something about any
Anything.
aspect of life, and it's just, and even if you don't know anything, even if you just know she needs a friendly voice, you just call her and talk to her, or go see her, or take the kids out for a day in the park so she can just debrief for a minute. There's no act of kindness is too small. Don't be afraid, don't be embarrassed, don't think it's something. I mean, really, teaching my oldest son how to shave, I mean, what guy is going to say, you know what, I bet she needs somebody to teach her kids how to shave? But that's the kind of thing we need. A little something little that takes something off our plate and gives gives the children something to see besides the environment that they're in. You know,
Mm,
it's not all families are this way. There's good dads out there, or there's good moms, or whatever, you know.
yeah.
You-
My last question for all of you now, I'll go back to you, Rachel. For women who feel terrified of being visible online or on camera, what is the first small action that they can take today to begin building confidence?
Just do a practice video. Turn on your camera, just on your phone. It doesn't need to have fancy equipment. You don't need to do anything out of the ordinary. Just turn on your camera, record yourself just natively to your phone. You don't have to do it on Instagram. You don't have to do it on TikTok. You don't have to put yourself on YouTube. And that's it. Just practice being on camera for 30 seconds to 60 seconds and do that every day just for 30 days. By the time the 30 days are up, you might actually feel a little more confident to actually put something like that out into the world and feel like you finally heard your voice, you finally found your voice. Just do something. It can be private. You don't have to share it yet, but just start practicing.
Rachel, I
Wow.
think I was always afraid of doing it because I was like, oh my God, the internet is forever.
Yeah.
And someone's like, here's some guidelines. If you would be ashamed of your children or your grandmother viewing it, don't do it.
Yeah.
And then
It's
it's
a great
like,
rule.
you give, like, as soon as you have that left and right, then you're like, okay,
Yeah.
now I
Mhm.
named my fear and I addressed my fear and now I have my left and right guidelines and I'm less scared now.
I love that. And it's so true. Yeah. And a lot of us just want to get good information out into the world, right? Like, unless you're completely lying about something or telling, falsehoods, you're doing the right thing. So, yeah.
Very nice. Gail, your last question. The
Yeah.
idea of power up and power down is fascinating. How can women practice regulating themselves in high stakes conversations, such as negotiations, promotions, or conflict?
That's easy. Regulate yourself everywhere. When you start realizing, when you're sitting with your friends, you'll start realizing that there's this power shift. Like you'll lean back, or you might lean in when you agree to, there's something that they want to say. Take one item and start practicing it, right? And make sure, become comfortable in silence. It's not one of those, I mean, I love it when they talk about you don't prepare for a storm when the storm's hitting, right? So you want to prepare for it before it ever happens.
Yeah.
And when you start, it's fun. It's fun to power up and power down. When I know I'm going into a situation and I get to just like say, okay, I'm just going to use power up, power down in this, it becomes fun because it is a dance. And when you realize that, you're doing it in your friendships, and it actually deepens your relationships with the people around you, because you're being who you are. You're being your authentic you, like Rachel talked about. And you're just not giving yourself away or shrinking or leaking in the situation. And it's amazing because you can show up at every table and be a better friend, be a better community member, be a better family member, because you are who you are, showing and not giving yourself away.
One thing I learned from you when we were doing the podcast was the hands. Is something you did. Please show us that.
This hand, it's, I don't know if you can see it here. It's kind of a triangle. Don't do these hands. These say to the unconscious mind, I'm praying you listen to me. I'm praying you believe me, right? But these hands are, our hands on the inside are back to our caveman days. They mean safety. So we like seeing people's hands. We don't like people walking into a room with their hands behind their back. So when I get on a podcast, wave, show your palms of your hands. It means you're trustworthy. This means I have authority. You can do it standing up, kind of upside down. You can do it like this. If you sit in a meeting long enough doing this, somebody will call on you. I love doing this, my silent little trick. But there's little things that you can do like that show that you are an authority on different things. Our body talks before we ever open our mouth. I always get so frustrated when I'm working with people and they're working so hard on their presentation and they don't think about how they're presenting it.
It's so true. Last question for you, Sue. For women whose careers have been interrupted by caregiving, relocation, or life circumstances, how can they begin reframing those experiences as leadership strengths rather than weaknesses?
So we like to tell them not to have gaps. So in the time that they're going to just take some time off, like try to do some strategic volunteering or try to go back and get the certification. And I think it's a lot easier to reframe the gap if you actually actively work to maintain your currency while you're taking the gap. It's a lot easier to do now, right? Like you can get an AI certificate online, so you can like know to come back and know how to query AI. You can get course, you can go to Coursera. But the strategic volunteering is what we tell our people to do is, and it's a way for them to get more more powerful positions and get more responsibility early on, so that when they go back into the workforce, they have that added facet. And it's all in, like, you just need to understand the lexicon at play, where, you know, for somebody who's done a career break, maybe a chronological resume doesn't make a lot of sense, maybe a functional one. So, you know, I think the easiest thing to do is to understand that you don't know what you don't know and seek some expert help, whether it's a coach or a resume writer or whatever, and let them help you frame it correctly, because none of us know how to speak about ourselves effectively. We would all undersell ourselves by, like, I mean, we're not men, we'd all undersell ourselves by 80%.
That is so true.
Joke in my head, I want the confidence of a middle-aged white man.
Unfortunately, none of us have that privilege.
No, we all, yes.
I love it. I work with the refugee service, and what you've just said is so true. So a lot of African immigrants who come to Australia, New Zealand are refugees. They have language problems. They've never really worked. And volunteering is one of the best ways of somebody just seeing your potential. I had one woman who's from India that I talked to, and she was stuck at home. Brilliant. I could tell this woman's got a brilliant mind, but she didn't have an education. She never went to school, didn't have any formal training. And I said to her, just volunteer. She's now got a job. And the people she was volunteering for gave her a really good recommendation. So it's not going to happen when you're sitting at home praying and hoping something will change. You have to put yourself out there.
No, because people don't understand that 85% of the jobs out there are never listed online. Like, it's always through a hidden. And so the only thing that's going to change from someone who wants to restart their career is you have to get out and expand your networks. That's the only thing that's going to change it for you.
I love it. Becky, your last question. So for survivors who still feel trapped and unheard, what message would you want them to hear about reclaiming their voice and rebuilding their lives?
Well, I think the most important thing is to first understand where you are. A lot of people are where I was, and that we don't know. We don't know that we're in an abusive situation, right? It's only when you recognize where you are that you can start taking steps to make your situation better. So recognizing where you are is the first step. And then after that, plan, 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 plan. And what both Rachel and Gail talked about in leadership and positioning and not shrinking in, and it was Sue with advocacy, all of that kind of ties in, because you have to become your own advocate, and you have to learn how to lead instead of shrinking back. You have to learn how to take those empowerment things where you can get them, you know. And any change that you make, is going to change the dynamic, because your abuser is expecting certain behaviors and certain reactions. And when you start changing that, everything changes. But again, you have to plan. You can't just go hog wild. That can land you in the emergency room, you know? So planning is really important. Strategy is really important. Um, so recognize where you are and then plan, talk to people.
I love the planning. You know, I was talking to a domestic violence survivor a few weeks ago, and she said she planned it so well. Like, the husband never gave her cash, but she would go into a supermarket to buy the groceries, and every week she would ask for cash back. And she had a little can that she buried outside the gate, and she would put $20 in there. It took her 2 years to leave.
Wow.
But by the time she left, and she was like you, she had kids, she wasn't going to leave her children. By the time she left, she had enough money to get a taxi to leave, just to physically leave that place. She had enough money to get a hotel room. She meticulously planned her exit. And a lot of times when you don't have money, you have to be creative on where is that money going to come from.
Exactly. And that is why my accountant, the first person who believed me, she was so critical, not just because she believed me, but because she was willing to take payment out of eggs from my farm. You know, she I mean, you go anywhere and they're going to expect a payment plan or a credit card or, cash or, whatever. And when you're being financially abused, you don't have that. You just don't. So, anything alternative is a gift, is a real gift,
And you shared with me that she was a survivor herself too, right?
Yes.
So you
Yes.
don't know who you're talking to. You don't know other people's life experiences. But
Right.
she believed you because she was a survivor herself. And
Exactly.
if you hadn't been vulnerable and shared what you were going through, you would never have had this breakthrough.
Exactly.
Gertrude, that brings up something. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No,
Becky, you talked about, though, how you talked to other people and other women, and they told you to clean the house better, like keep the kids quiet. I mean, it just resonates with me how we as women don't support each other. We don't listen to each other. We don't tap into other people's gut feelings, and we aren't there for each other. And then we wonder why we don't have a presence when it comes to some bigger things. And it resonates with me how, it's like, we are not good friends. And, it's one thing to be able to help somebody, but I wonder how many people are out there that are going through this that we don't even hear. We don't stop and listen to. And I just want to encourage everybody today to be the woman that you need in your own life to the women around you.
Gail, you bring up a good point, though, about advocacy and allies, because a lot of the work I've done with boards has been in a predominantly male society, in a male-dominated boardroom. And my allies in those rooms were never the women, it was the men. And I was always, I'm like, we're all here. Like, why are you being such an asshole to me? Like, these women. And it was always the men who would they would say, you know what? I'm not quite sure what you're talking about either. So don't just talk to Sue, talk to me. And I always appreciated that because they would always deflect. And they didn't need to do that, but they would. And so, I mean, I think, yes, women need to, defend and stand up for women, but I really appreciate the male allies out there who don't need to, and they always do.
Do you think, Sue, that comes from that we have a limited mindset, that we think that we don't deserve some different things or a better life, so that we feel like as women we have to compete with each other because we have to hoard the resources that are out there, because we don't realize that there's enough for everybody to go around, because
I've met so many women who think that if they share their power, it diminishes their power. And I'm exact opposite. If you share your power, you get more power because you just expanded your network and your reach. And so I think it's that scarcity mindset where they're like, no, there's not enough for everybody. I have to keep it all for myself.
I agree.
Oh, ladies, we could talk until the cows come home. Thank you so much for your powerful contributions to this conversation. Our stories were so different, but so similar. Life experiences so different, but yet so similar again. And I think when we have these conversations is when we realize where our power lies.
Mm-hmm.
If we can just uplift each other and share each other's experiences. And I do love what happened with my sleeping on the job this morning, because you guys got to connect before we came on. I was listening while I was in the shower, putting on my makeup, and you were introducing yourselves and talking. And this was the vision and the dream. And that's why I asked you to come in and be here for the full session. So you're not just coming in and 15 minutes and leaving. Now, the 5 of us know each other quite intimately. And I can see when Sue's having a conference in Washington, D.C., inviting Becky to come and share her story,
Yeah.
Magic happens when we meet in these spaces. It's virtual, but we're now connected forever. So each of you put your emails in the chat so you stay connected. Let's create some magic, because I am planning to come and do a few things in the United States, but I want you as a group to stay connected as well. But thank you all so, so much for being here, for sharing your stories and uplifting women globally by sharing them. Woo! So I'm now going into session 2 with the next group of speakers. Again, thank you, ladies. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Bye,
Bye
guys.
for now, everybody. Wonderful.